Welcome, ladies, to another edition of the Worthy Woman Collective podcast. But this is a special one. This is a sister session with my girl, Dominique Jaramillo. And I'm so proud of myself because for the last 10 minutes, I've been butchering the pronunciation of this.
You're awesome.
I got it. So we're good. So let me introduce you to her. She is the founder of nurturingastrology.com. And how we met was I was looking to have a reading done and she was referred to me. And honestly, since we met, it's been like a house on fire. We have dates every week and it's so lovely. I'm so grateful Zoom exists because without Zoom, I wouldn't be able to have these kind of powerful friendships and connections in places that I can't even visit right now. And I'm a little afraid to visit right now. The United States of America is not someplace I'm ready to go at this moment. But all my friends who live there, you're welcome to come here. You can come.
Yay.
So Dom, just talk to us. Tell us a little bit about you, your business, like your specialty, and, fill us in on all the goodness of what you do for people.
For sure. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be doing this with you. So for me, I came to astrology because I'm an Aquarius sun and I've always been a seeker. I've always loved astrology. And even though I sought through a lot of different things, astrology was the thing that sort of connected all the dots for me about myself, first and foremost. And then I started, looking at my family's charts and all this stuff, and it just blew my mind wide open to understand my parents. And then it just allowed me to make choices then to have better relationships with them based on knowing how they were built and different from me. And then all of a sudden I was like, getting married and having a baby, which I never thought I would, right? My life was like, yeah. And then
another connection.
Yeah, for sure. But it was like a light bulb went off and I was like, oh my gosh, I can know this stuff about my child, like before he even arrives, the potentials, the chart, so it just blew it all up for me. So I started studying like maybe 15 years ago. I mean, really went on this journey for myself, doing readings and all that stuff. So I was doing a lot of readings, but then when I had a baby, it just all became about parenting because I just couldn't believe how priceless this was, and if parents really understood their child from this perspective, what a difference it could make, right? So everything shifted when I had my son. And I just went gangbusters into that. Of course, I wanted to stay present for him. So I was learning, applying, observing, I was going through this experiment with him as I built my conscious parenting with astrology business. And then once he got a little older and I had more free time, I was like, I need a community. I want to share this stuff I've learned, and how it's made a difference. And so I went from sort of just that to focusing more on nurturing astrology because I'm a Cancer rising and I want to nurture families and children, parents to be better parents the best I can. And so, yeah, it's been the biggest focus in the last probably 3 to 5 years for parenting. So I'm really growing this side of my business over the last few years because I created a Power 3 line of baby onesies when Joseph was 2 or 3 because I wanted to find this fun way to introduce astrology to new parents, without scaring the heck out of them about what this stuff was, So I created like the Bright Futures line for the sun and the security blankets for the moon, and then first impressions for the rising. So everyone has like a cute little saying, but the tag was like the keepsake for the parent to introduce them to this, great information that could support their parenting. So that was like my first big project. So, and now Conscious Parenting with Astrology, the group is like taking off and building, and I'm just
and that's your group on Facebook. So for those who don't know, we're going to give you so much information today that your mind may explode a little, but just use this as the tipping point to going deeper into what feels correct, right, and true for you. And then join her group, because when you join her group, you get access to her, first of all. And secondly, it's like the guidance you get is so loving and so nurturing and so supportive. And her whole mission is really, she's here to help all of us grow, to become, the best that we can be. And especially giving our kids more of like what they need, but them also like as they grow and learn, they're understanding more about us from this deep, deep level, which I don't think our parents even thought about these kind of things, you know.
It didn't exist. Conscious parenting didn't exist when
But
our parents were
astrology
young.
did. This is what blows my
Yes,
mind.
it
Like
did.
astrology did, and like elements of human design even did. And it's
Yes.
amazing to me how, you know, like we've been dabbling in this work, you and I both, for a long time. Like, I mean, I was first introduced to astrology probably when I was like 18 or 17, but I didn't, it was so expansive. It was way beyond, I was just interested in learning a little bit more about myself, but I seriously then didn't think it was as big of a deal as I know it to be now, once I've had, you know, a proper reading and it being structured and me being like, oh, that's why I do that thing, right? So
Yeah.
what I would love to do and hear from you is tell us about your Power of Three. Tell us how this is, you know, a game changer for moms and how it can
Yeah,
help put them in their power and their own worth.
for sure. So I really believe that astrology can help us build self-worth for adults and children. With adults, it's, you know, we're already grown. So we, looking at our charts gives us that ability to reflect a little bit on our childhood and our upbringing, and maybe kind of figure out where we weren't nurtured. Like you said, our parents didn't know this, and most of them were in maybe survival mode. I know my mom was, you know, I
Yeah.
got to raise two kids, and that was it. Food on the table, whatever. So you weren't maybe nurtured in the way that suited you best, and then experiences and things built on that. We weren't necessarily, you know, feeling a lot of self-esteem or strong in who we were, or even knew who we were. So for adults, I think it's about looking back and accepting and understanding our story, so then we can make choices and do it differently, right?
And this is that deconditioning process that we
Yes.
talk about with human design. So you can see like the beauty of us being able to like collab and work together is like, where Dom's going to bring us through, you know, like how do the planets in transit really affect us, and like go deep into, like there's so much, but it's like, how can we decondition what we didn't get and what we did get that wasn't right?
Yeah, because your experiences through life send always, you know, we're drawn to things that end up validating the belief system that we've built, right?
Yeah.
So then we have to go through making changes in maybe relationships or surroundings or whatever, so that we're actually,
Uncomfortable changes.
yes, they are. Often they are. That's how transformation comes.
Right.
You know? So, and I truly believe that conscious parenting with astrology starts with us.
Yes.
You're always ultimately bringing it back to you, regardless of what you're learning about your child's chart. They're just a little seedling. You're just nurturing them along. You know, that's one of the reasons. This is another podcast, but that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of astrologers don't really push reading charts for children, because there's this possibility of like putting them in a box, or, you know, predicting them, or, you know, what's going to happen and stuff. And it's really not about that for me. It's about knowing self and knowing your child, the differences, and then how we can nurture that relationship, you know.
And
So
the family dynamics chart. So Dominique did this whole report for my family, and it was like, this was after my own reading. Okay. So it's like all this just to know about myself. And then I'm like, now dynamically, how do we all work together? And it was like, oh my gosh, so much great, beautiful information that really was like, it's as simple as 1, 2, 3, right?
yeah,
These are the 3 things you really need to know. And this is how you guys can interact. And like,
absolutely.
maybe go into, do you want to talk to us about the moon first? Is that, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason why I start with the moon, for 2 reasons. First of all, the moon is sort of that internal, intuitive, self-nurturing thing. It's what we do to feel safe naturally, instinctually. It's that fight or flight. And we, for the most part, we live there in our moon. You know, we aspire to the sun, but we live in our moon on a day-to-day, you know. And for children, especially when they're young, like 0 to 7, at least, it's all about the moon.
Uh-huh.
So this is why going with the moon is really, really the first step, even before the sun, in my opinion, you know, because you understand, by understanding your child's moon, you really know what they need to feel safe and nurtured. And children are always trying to basically get their needs met, you know? So it's like they cry, they're hungry, you know, and so when you're really even when they don't speak, like I didn't, of course, that was one of the benefits of knowing Joe's, astrology before he could speak to me, because I would know this child is going to be super sensitive. He may be crying for reasons he doesn't even understand, and then that can be really confusing and frustrating for moms when they don't know how to soothe their child.
Well, and they think they're doing something wrong when
Exactly.
ultimately it's not about wrong or right. It's about like needs that you just don't understand.
Right. I think that's why a lot of psychologists say just to hold, just the act of holding and bonding with your child
Yeah.
is everything, because it's just that need to feel safe, So if you know what you need instinctually to feel safe, knowing what your child needs, you're then building confidence in them, because you're like, oh, I can do this. I'm getting my needs met, right? And you don't realize until retrospect that you're actually supporting building like emotional intelligence, because when they get older, you can then explain to him, them that this is how you feel, and it may be different, how you're a little bit more sensitive than other kids, or you might easily get your feelings hurt, but it teaches them, or you allows you to teach them how to accept other people and how they feel and what they need, and their needs may be very different from yours. I
And
mean,
it
isn't that
teaches them to
everything?
respect and honor their own feelings, and that it's okay if you're more emotional because that's just how you're built.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's important for them not to judge themselves for being sensitive, and for us to be hard on them for having feelings,
Well, I mean, how many times do you hear a parent say, or maybe not so much as openly now, but like before, boys don't cry, stop crying, what are you crying about, there's no need to cry. Meanwhile, it's like that is actually a need they have, and they're expressing
Yes.
whatever is going on for them.
And especially, watery boys or more sensitive boys, the society we live in. And then, even my husband is a Cancer, and he's a sensitive guy, but he also kind of leads with that masculine macho thing, like most men do. And
He's sad though, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, that though. But it's still great as a tool for married couples and for parents co-parenting,
Yes.
because I can say objectively, you don't say, oh, you're parenting him wrong, or don't do that, or you get in a fight. You can say, look, this is how he's built. He's sensitive. He's going to cry, and he's not going to change. That's how, he is. You can, but the more confidence he has, and this was something that I knew he'd be super sensitive and emotional, but I wanted to teach him sort of boundaries. It's the biggest thing for Pisces too. And once you know your own worth, you can deal with your surroundings. People are teasing you or stuff happens, and you're like, it just seems to bounce off Joe now, because I feel he knows who he is, and he's been loved and nurtured in a way that his sensitivity is okay.
If you get nothing else out of this, it's like, know that the whole goal here is to make them understand how valuable they are and how unique they are, and how that honoring and following every inkling that they get, it's like really helping to nurture them, right? But also, don't we feel so much better and confident about ourselves and our ability to parent when we can help them feel whole?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and a lot of parents who have, say, kids with fiery moons, I mean, they're just like, it's a lot to take sometimes. And if you're a sensitive mom, if you're a water sign or something, then it might be a lot for you. But if you understand that fire and that passion, how to nurture that so that it frees you up from thinking, I can't control this kid, or he can't control his mood, or whatever it is, you're giving him the ability to feel confident who he is. And that, fire is great, because ultimately that's going to be something that propels him. That's going to give him confidence when he's older. It may seem like, wild emotions are very passionate, or, outwardly expressed in a way that's strong. And you got to be careful not to want to shut that down, because that passion is going to help him go far.
Because he's going to have to decondition that later if you screw him up now. So, okay, what else do we need to know about the moon? I mean, there's so much, right? But maybe even just using, well, the example, like you got examples of the boys. So we're using the boys as our examples.
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, I know that I knew Joseph would be, quite sensitive with a Pisces. Actually, he's an uber Pisces, sun, moon. He's also like got Mars, Mercury, Yeah, so
All in Pisces?
yeah, he has like 6 planets in Pisces. So I knew, I was like, ooh, I'm going to have to definitely take a deep dive into this, you know? And I'm more of I'm an air mom. So I thought, oh my God, my logic is going to be lost on this child. I'm not gonna be able to talk to him. But this is the thing that comes with observation and knowing the chart is like, he's super sensitive, but all that Pisces falls in a house ruled by Aquarius, 11. So he actually, when he's ready and feels good, he actually does talk and he does share his feelings, you know. But when they're young, you know, sometimes you just gotta hold them. Sometimes, you know, a hug is just all you need. But yeah, and even with Hunter, like Hunter is a Capricorn moon, right? So how do you observe his needs? I mean, this is an earth sign, you know, so he might be a little bit more reserved, a little bit more, you know, quiet.
Well, anyone who saw Hunter growing up, it's like boss baby. So he literally,
Awesome.
I mean, he didn't get hair until he was 2.5, and he literally every photo he's like this. You should see his passport photo. He looks like this.
Oh, that's so
I'm like, okay, boss baby, where are we going? So he, you know, sometimes more so now he's way more expressive, but definitely like he's a serious kid. He's very serious business, and like he's full sentence business. Like, this is what you did. What did he say the other night? Oh, when I put him to sleep, putting him down, it was like, he doesn't like you to leave, right? So he's like, Dwayne says, how was your evening? He says, well, he says, you could have made it was poor choices going down. He says, you made poor choices putting me down. What? Like, what? I mean,
he is a little adult.
He's a little adult, which is, I mean, I'm appreciative that he can communicate the things that are happening, but I'm just like, where did you even hear that?
That is so funny. Oh yeah, he's totally but also a Capricorn moon child needs a certain amount of structure and needs to know what's happening and what the plan is, and you know what I mean. So it's very different than, you know, a child that's just sort of like Joseph, who's more sensitive, or just he's maybe a little bit more needy. You know, you're like you say, he's like a little man. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's like, oh, so what's the plan here today, or what are we doing? Totally. You know, it's like totally adulting.
It's like, shows me his value. The other goes, my tummy is hungry now. Okay, well, we'll eat. Like, we definitely have a lot of structure, and that was one thing that I really appreciated as a kid, and I mean, he seems to appreciate it, so we just go with it.
Sometimes with a Capricorn moon, you might have to actually remind him to have a little fun. You know, you are a kid. I know you feel like an adult already, but you're only 5, you know, or whatever. Yeah. Like, have some fun. And that may be, you know, because they grow up really fast. And if he's already feels like an adult, you want him to be able to break loose and, you know, look, I love that you're responsible and you feel like you need to be responsible, but here, just play, you know? You're not responsible for this. Mommy is. Like, have a good time, you know? Right. Or allow him to be, you know, here, you can be responsible for this. This is your domain, and empower that sense of boss, because that's going to come in handy down the line, right?
Yeah.
But let him, you know, that seriousness, maybe, you know what I mean? Reminding him to be.
No, don't you worry. He's wild. He can have his wild man side. Just not that serious. Just okay. So hopefully this is making sense to everyone listening. And now let's move into, is there anything else you feel like you need to share?
I think we talked about some of the examples and stuff. We can dive into the moon, and we can always, you know, do a wrap up if we need to.
Okay.
The moon is a little bit, you know, it's definitely a lot more fun because the sun rather, because the sun is what lights us up, what energizes us, what makes us feel alive and passionate. And I always call the sun the journey to becoming, which can take your whole life. You know what I mean? Like, the journey of becoming is sort of unending, right? It's always a process. But I think understanding the child's sun and knowing what lights them up, you have the ability to see and guide them in ways that they can really excel and find joy and happiness. You know, I knew that, for example, again, that Joseph was going to be extremely creative or drawn to creative things as a Pisces. I didn't know if it was music or dance or, you know, what he might be into, or art. But sometimes everyone's like, oh, Pisces are always artistic in some way. So I thought, well, you know, let's sort of, but still he was such a boy. monster trucks, dinosaurs, you know what I mean? So he was still a boy, but you could see that he was drawn to certain things where even in those things, he had a creative imagination, you know what I mean? So, but I exposed him to music class, and we did mommy and me music class together, which was awesome and so fun, which he loved. And, you know, tried to get him into some piano when he got a little older. Didn't care for that. Too much structure. He needs, you know, he needed balance. No. Didn't work. He was like, yeah, I don't want to continue that. I said one day, I was like, hey, how about we try an art class? Do you feel like taking like because he loved to draw, loved to color. But I was like, would you like to learn about art? And he was like, yeah, I'll try it.
Yeah.
I mean, after one class, he came out beaming, and he has loved it. And he's been in art class for the last 2 years. And I was blown away because I couldn't believe the skill he actually showed in that first class. And I was like, oh, there it is. Also, my grandpa was the last artist in my family. So we're like, it skipped a few generations. Maybe it landed in Joe.
Well, so just so you know, in the human design structure, the children get their coding from the grandparents.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah.
The maternal.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
It's very fascinating.
Yeah. So I was like, every time I saw him, you know, doing art, I thought I couldn't help think of my grandpa. I was like, this is so great, you know, that someone in our family has like picked this up, you know.
Well,
so
I think genetics is a thing. Like we get coding from, right? I mean, it's very interesting to think about, but we actually when your grandmother had your mother, the eggs for you would have been in your grandmother technically, because right?
Yeah.
Very interesting. So all of this coding, it's just like the epigenetics coding carries on.
It's fascinating. But yeah, absolutely. Like for the sun, knowing your child's sun, you can, you know, sun sign is everywhere. Everybody, you know, shares about the sun.
When people see horoscopes, they only see sun.
Yeah, the sun. I always tell people when you read your horoscope, also read your rising sign if you know it. And sometimes you can even read the moon if you want, but definitely the rising. Because when they say so-and-so, this planet is lighting up your house of relationships, yeah, well, it might not be for you because you may not be that rising sign. So whenever, you know, when you write horoscopes, it's always like the sun is in the first. So I always encourage people to read their rising.
I was like, now you're going deep, too deep.
Yeah.
People are like,
anyway,
what?
Sticking with the sun, and but definitely this helps you build their worth in terms of supporting and introducing them to things that they would identify naturally or enjoy.
And
you know, like
them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a little Virgo wants to help around the house or like build stuff, you know, and then your Geminis, I mean, they want to just, you've got to give them freedom to just explore and read, and anything that they're interested in, let them go, you know, and know that they're going to have a hard time picking just one thing, you know, they're going to want a variety, that's something. So there's like so much you learn about the sun sign can guide a parent into just sort of knowing openly, you know, what you can do to encourage. There's a lot of great things that help kids along the way, even with like a Pisces. I was worried that everyone says Pisces are lazy, you know, or things like that. And I worried about that. We got him into, and he's an only child, we would get him into sports. So he started playing baseball. And you get all these great benefits when kids are in sports, right? Yeah. But for this, you know, Pisces child, it really helped him physically and be, you know, active, and his energy, you know. So there's a lot of good pluses that I think whenever you give children an opportunity to do something they can excel at, they're building confidence. They feel really good about themselves.
I mean, you know? The idea with knowing this isn't that you put them in a box, like you say, people are afraid to do this reading, but it's more like to see, okay, well, they may be more pulled towards this direction. So encourage that and see what within that, you know, umbrella might speak to them. Like, because when you talked about Hunter and his, he's like a Cancer sun, right? And you had asked about him, you know, cooking or doing things like this. He absolutely loves preparing foods and is the most amazing little baker. Him and Dwayne do baking all the time. It's like so cute, and he just loves it.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a Cancer sun. So also he's gonna love doing those things with you guys, with his family, with his, I mean, Cancer is their family, is everything. And being with them lights them up. So doing things with them, and also that Capricorn moon is nurtured by cooking. Oh yeah, we can put all the ingredients and we do this, you're putting something together, and at the end you have this awesome cake, Yeah. So you see that you're absolutely not trying to put them in a box. It's just understanding the essence of that energy and what kind of things that particular sign is drawn to or would enjoy. And you give, that's the option of giving them some options and seeing what they are then drawn to, I mean, that certain, water signs are not necessarily going to be competitive, so, I mean, that competitive streak, and also you have the family and the experiences, and a lot of families, it's like, oh, well, we're a sports family, and so you're going to do this. And then that poor child feels completely like he doesn't fit in, or she doesn't fit in, because she's not competitive. She might try and bake it or, do her best.
Well, and then this is where you can see how people create stories and different identities that aren't actually who they are. So it's like, and a lot of, coaches are talking about, well, being authentic. Well, you have a lot of breaking down walls with people like that who have built an identity based on something that's not even something they wanted.
Right. And as you get older and older, I mean, that's harder to fix.
Decondition from. It's so much work.
There's a big follow of that thing about reparenting. I mean, that's what it's about, going back and realizing, oh, well, I grew up this way in this type of household and it didn't suit me. Another thing in parenting and child development is they call it a goodness of fit. So does the household, the dynamic of the home, actually suit the child? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. This is where I feel like understanding yourself and your partner, your co-parent, your husband, whoever, and your child or children, having that information, like even the seedlings, just the sun, moon, and rising, without even going all the way into the depths of astrology, really just gives you some nuggets in your back pocket that can change everything.
Communication, right? Even between the partners.
Absolutely. And Mercury is that extra one that absolutely could go into, but often because, and this is a sidebar, but often Mercury, because of his orbit, is pretty close to the sun. So often Mercury's in the same sign as the sun.
Yeah. It's the same with the gates in human design.
Yeah. So it doesn't go too far. So you're still can be speaking, like you're going to get a lot out of the way someone communicates by understanding their sun and their moon just as much. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just a deeper level in terms of processing information and things like that if you get into Mercury. So you can still get a nice, foundation of understanding. And that's all it is for new moms, is get this just sort of foundation of what my kid needs, what they'll really enjoy, make them happy and feel good, and then observe, then pay attention,
Yeah, and then trusting your intuition to know, like, especially if they're younger, they're looking to you for the guidance. So it's like, trust yourself enough to be like, yeah, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that?
I have this great story. I was talking to another mom in my group the other day, and she said she has a little girl who is an Aquarius sun. And she said she walked over and picked up a UPS slip off the floor, right? And she came over with a little pen, and she said, I think she was like maybe 3 or 4. And she said, Mommy, will you sign my petition? And she was like, now I would have engaged her. I would have totally went with it anyway. But immediately I was like, Aquarius. Like, this is totally Aquarian in her. She's already, wanting to fight for a cause. She's already I was like, oh my gosh, I love that story. It's priceless. So when a mom knows that, she doesn't just count it off as, oh, how cute was that?
Right.
She goes, oh, I'm seeing this expression
the potential of
this little future, crusader, or trendsetter, or who knows, so she sees that. And then I go, yeah, so if she gets into school and all of a sudden she's like, Mom, I'm gonna raise money for this cause or that cause, all right, she's really moving into Aquarius nature and embracing that and loving that. And so you can support it even more, knowing and feel better about it, knowing that you're actually supporting who she is, and not. So that's where I say observing is really so important as a parent.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Okay. So now let's talk about the rising, because I don't think a lot of people talk about the rising, you know?
Yeah, it's the rising sign is basically the sign that's on the eastern sunrise at the moment of birth. This is where time comes in. So if you don't know your time of birth, you might not know, your actual rising. But the rising sign is sort of the face of the chart. It's the doorway. It's the rules the first house of identity. Who am I? It's how we meet the world. That's why I call the baby line first impressions, because it's about a first impression.
Yeah.
When you meet someone, if you wanted to try and guess their sign, you might have a better chance of guessing their rising than their sun, because it's what we lead with, and it's how people see us upon a first meeting. Okay. So when that's really different than the rest of the chart, or sun or moon, then you know that people may see your child and see you in a way that isn't a true reflection of who you are. Like if you have your sun conjunct your first, your ascendant in the first house, who you are, what you see, everybody sees that. Like there's, but if it's totally different, where you have a Pisces sun and a Taurus rising, Taurus is, they're reliable, they're dependable, they're kind, they're loving, they're stable, right? And not that emotional, just, they present themselves as strong. And then if you have a Pisces sun or Pisces moon like my son, you're not going to see all that sensitivity in there. You're not going to see when his feelings are hurt. He may put on a good front, or he may say, yeah, this is when he gets older, who knows? He may say, yeah, I'll do that with you. I'll be there, and commit to something or someone, and then get sidetracked and not show. You know what I mean? It's like, because he got pulled into something else, so it's like understanding that, hey, you made a commitment, you need to be there, So the way that we're seen is very different. I'm a Cancer rising, so I'm seen as very motherly. Right. And throughout my life, I was, maybe too motherly. I had to like back off, but I care too much, and people see my emotions. I do carry it on my face. It's hard for me to cover up how I feel, but I'm air mostly on the inside. I have air planets in water houses, so I'm thinking a lot about how I feel as opposed to just feeling it. And this is something I learned from my son. And this is where our understanding our children, and why these children came to us. They came to teach us something always, right? So for me, I know it's about really just feeling what I feel, as opposed to always having to think about it or overthinking what it means to just feel something. So there's this dynamic of what's happening inside. And
okay, so now I'm like, explain knowing me and Hunter, explain the dynamic to me then.
Okay, so you are Libra rising.
Yep.
And you are a Sag sun and a Scorpio moon.
Yeah.
Right? So we know you are lovely accommodator of everyone. You are sweet, you are kind, you are accommodating, and you often put others before yourself. Inside, you really have a deep need to get your needs met, and you may sacrifice those at times to make sure that everyone is good. You put on a brave face and everything's good and we're all going to get along and there's peace and harmony, but inside you could be really ticked off because things aren't really feeling good to you. And then or student, or you have to really pay attention to when you're in a particular scenario or situation that you really feel good about being there, and safe and trusting to share, because you need a certain amount of trust and safety, and control, right? Yeah. But that Libra still wants to be really accommodating. So you're always going to be accommodating first, and with Hunter, he is Scorpio rising, and then his Capricorn moon and his Cancer sun, right? So it's interesting because I call the Scorpio risings little enigmas, because it's very mysterious, the sign of Scorpio, in a lot of respects. And so people may not know how to read him or take him at first. All the time. There's a certain amount of guard up for safety reasons, and you've got that need for safety and caution in the moon as well. So people may have a hard time getting to know him because he's not going to feel safe just being who he is. You'll see that at home, no problem, right? So if there's a misunderstanding between him and a friend at some point, you can tell the other child probably like, I don't understand. I'm just trying to do this. I don't understand you. And you can explain to Hunter, like, I understand you need to feel, safe, and maybe you don't trust the situation, but is he a good friend? Do you feel like you could, maybe make up with him? Do you want to be his friend? Like allowing him to sort of nurture that. Look, I know you need to have to feel a certain way before you can enter a situation or a room, or, or to engage, with the world. And maybe a little bit like, I don't know if I feel safe, So for you, knowing that, you can encourage him and also give him the benefit of the doubt. If he doesn't feel safe somewhere, don't let him go.
Always, yeah.
I always trusted that. I took Joseph to several preschools, trying to check out preschools. And we went to this one place twice because I took him, I went to check it out, and then I went to this other thing there. And I took Joe there twice, and both times he's like, and I was like, do you like the school? They have this? He's like, no. And he was young. No. I was like, okay. And then I took him to an open house at this other one, and he was lit up like a Christmas tree.
So
this is where I want to go.
It's so interesting because if we add on, now we don't want to go here too much, but if we add on the element of like the open G in your human design chart,
let's go there.
Those are location people. So if they for example, if a Hunter has a defined G, so he knows who he is, he's comfortable in himself, and that's growing and learning, right? It's still being developed. But anyone who has an open G center has this
Joseph has a closed G.
They question their lovability, and location is the big thing. So it's just an extra layer to think about. Like if you have that open G center in the middle, like location, you need to be with the right people at the right time, and if you're not, you need to leave. Like you need to honor that it's not right, and you got to go.
Well, it looks like Joseph has a closed G. I've got his right there. It looks like he has a closed G center.
Defined is colored in, right?
Oh, defined. Yes, it's colored in.
Yeah, and I mean, like, to be honest, too, when they're younger, they're still trying to figure out who they are. So it could just be like part of the process, right?
Well, we know that kids are naturally just instinctive, and again, moon first, because they run on their intuition first and foremost, right? Yeah. So what happens as we get older, that is suppressed. We start not trusting ourselves, we don't trust our instincts, or we don't trust our intuition, maybe because of experiences or things that have happened. Yeah. So it's, again, nurturing that moon is really nurturing their style, their way of nurturing themselves, or instinctually, guiding, feeling their way through life, and how they uniquely do that. So yeah, because you're always, how many parents, I second guess myself all the time.
Well, and it's interesting that, kids don't actually develop their aura until they're 7. So they're like open sponges until they're 7. So that's imagine how impressionable, they are. And actually I heard this one description. I thought it was so awesome. It was like, well, how impressionable are kids depending on different circumstances and experiences? And the woman said, look at a bag of flour. Place your hand on the bag of flour and take it off. Is there an imprint? That's what happens to the kid. And this isn't just about like only big conversations, even little, like they're just so impressionable. They're so open. They're so receptive, and they're so tuned in that they're just like, they take everything that is being said for truth.
And what kind of fear does that put in a parent, new parent? Yeah. We talk about new parenting, being a parent is scary, but for conscious parents, it's like they know already that everything they do is going to make an impression. And so you have to this is another thing where when you learn about the chart, or you start doing research online and you hear things or you read things that are negative, if you will, and you start freaking out, oh, my child's going to be that. You have to take a deep breath and understand that, first of all, you are ready or a step ahead if you're taking this approach to really knowing yourself,
100%.
knowing your child, knowing your differences, and consciously making choices every day to do your best to nurture them. I mean, in some regards, it doesn't really matter. We're going to screw them up. They're going to have some issues. We're human, we're human. We're all doing the best we can with what we have and what we know.
Yeah, the faster we can acknowledge the fact that, like, okay, even if you know all of the things, there's still going to be something that gets triggered. There's going to be some weirdo planet trans.
Yeah, or just an experience that hits them from the outside world that,
you have no control over.
You have no control over. And I think that's a big part of it. Is conscious parenting is also being aware that we're all doing the best we can with what we know. And astrology is just a powerful tool to know our child, to know ourselves in a very unique way that is specific to them. And then there's still subjectivity. You're still who you are. You know what I mean? So there's still things I see in my son that are very much me or very much my husband, and so you are going to make impressions,
Yes.
And it's just by the nature of who you are. But still, if you're aware of the differences, I mean, Joseph is so sensitive and kind and loving, and I love his sensitivity, and I envy it because I wish I could feel the way he feels, and experience life in the way he does. When I'm frustrated with that I'm like, come on, let's do this. I don't know, come on, or repeating myself constantly because, when I get frustrated, I have to remember, okay, this child just, he just does life different. I just got to take a chill. I check myself before I wreck myself, and
like the number one line in this house.
Yeah, before I create a problem that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's it's fascinating to me. It's always, I do believe that it's made a difference. I just fundamentally believe that knowing my child, simply like that story, like just knowing when he cried or when I'd ask him why he was upset and he didn't know, instead of being like, well, how can you not know you're crying? I would be like, oh, it's okay, let me just hold you. Because I know as a Pisces, he feels everything.
Yeah.
He might not know why the heck he's crying or feels hurt or sad.
So it's like, okay, look, we've already, an hour has passed and we have talked about, and we could go on for more hours, a lot more hours.
For sure.
The beauty of this, surfacing these three most important elements is like just knowing these could give you a little bit of hope and liberation to understanding more about yourself, because you're not just your sun sign.
That's right.
There's so much more to you. And
compassion for self and other, and compassion for your partner, compassion for your child. I think the biggest thing is you want as a parent to feel that you're truly confident in your choices, and even recognizing that sometimes you're not going to be, that you're not going to always
be. You're doing
a
good job, that everything you're doing, if you're listening to this podcast, you're already like the 1%, because you know what I mean? Like not everyone is doing this work on this deep level. And I applaud you for that, because this isn't easy. It's not easy to acknowledge like, oh yeah, there were some elements in my own upbringing that were not great. And like, now I'm doing things in a certain way that I wish I wasn't. But like the understanding and the knowledge of that alone is enough to set the new path.
Absolutely. It's not about blaming either. I don't blame my parents for who I am. You know what I mean? I still chose them, if you believe in that, right?
Yep.
So it's not about blaming. It's about recognizing, oh, this is my story. This is what's brought me here. I wouldn't change one thing about where I am right now. So how can you not have love and compassion and appreciation for the journey and the parents you had?
You get to rewrite the story. This is the other beautiful piece. Is like, you get to choose what tomorrow looks like. You get to choose today in the moment what you want to do about the thing that's happening.
Astrology helped me separate myself from my family and my parents in a way, because in Aquarius I always felt like I didn't fit in anyway, right? Mm-hmm. And so embracing my originality and who I am, and being able to I can have great relationships with each of these people in my family, but I know who I am now, and it's okay that I'm different from them, or that we have different views, or are built differently, and then I can choose how I want that relationship to be. And it's the same thing with the child. you have, you know, a choice here. You understand how your child's built, you know, from your work, how you're built. And then you just go, hey, and have that in your back of your mind, live your life, enjoy it, and have those tools and those tips in the back of your mind about the astrology. You don't even have to look every day. You're in your life. You'll start to see it and experience it. And there's just so many benefits to be able to stop in that moment and go, oh, okay, I don't need to freak out about this. It's just the energy of the day, you know, and it's a tough time for everybody. Think about this time. How stressful has this time been for parents, right? So I've been trying to promote in the group, you know, a lot of self-care for parents so that they can have more patience with their children, especially during Mars retrograde, right? And all these heavy transits, to have more patience and compassion for what everyone's experiencing, including our children.
You know, and the beauty of using, like, I was just recorded a podcast earlier today that was just all about like how to utilize this electric energy that's buzzing through. I mean, we can choose to name it however we want, but I prefer to call the next couple of weeks to be very electric. Okay, so how do we harness that electric buzz and turn it into something creative?
Yeah.
How can we turn that energy into like not only doing the self-care practices, but like expressing ourselves in ways that are very beautiful and expansive. And it doesn't need to be, you know, really complicated. It can be simple, and you have fun with, get down on your hands and knees with your kid and like build a little wooden tower or whatever it is, bake some cookies, do something.
I think this whole time, I think that's been one of the benefits of this year, as messed up as it is so many families are getting an opportunity to really bond with their kids because they're always off at work in new ways. So at the same time, it can be frustrating juggling work and their school and all that stuff. There's moments, and I'm sure every family's had them, where you're just like, the quality time is priceless that you've been able to have. And the bond, and the kids are probably like, oh my God, mom and dad are home all the time.
100%.
You know?
And they're having your undivided attention. I mean, we're so distracted by our phones, and we're not giving the kids the attention that they need, not by just, it's so unconscious.
Yeah.
Right? It's so unconscious that what did somebody call it? The doomsday scrolling. Like, it's true, right? It's
a lot of self-care is limiting that.
Turning it off. 2 months. I took a 2-month break, 2-month hiatus, and it was the best thing I ever did for my soul.
So envious. So envious.
Yeah, it was good. Okay, listen, so we're going to wrap it up. Obviously, this was so amazing. We're going to have you back because I feel like you just need to be our resident astrological voice.
Oh, I love it.
The voice of Dom.
The voice of Dom. Better than the voice of Doom.
Voice of Dom, not Doom.
The voice of Dom. Love it. Yeah, I would love to. It'd be great. Yeah, this is just our, our initial, fun.
This is the launch pad. Okay, so where can people find you? What's your website?
nurturingastrology.com.
And you have a link to your clothing on there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. My Etsy store is Duality and Beyond, but there's also, you can get to that through the website as well.
I'm going to put the links in the bottom of the podcast too, just so that people can find them really quickly.
Cool. Yeah. And then Conscious Parenting with Astrology, that's the name of the group. You can, a lot of people have just been Googling and coming across the group and joining. And so that's been growing, and we're trying to do more talks in there and share more information. I do like a Q&A Tuesday. I do like a Working with the Chart Wednesday, pick some aspect that we can maybe dive in together. So it's growing, and I'm trying to do more. And
she has an excellent newsletter that is very detailed, and you will love it. It is so juicy, so good, and you are so amazing.
We're actually doing, I've been doing this project for a long time. I'm writing the Conscious Parenting Guide for a children's book series. That's been in the works for a long time, but we are looking to publish our first one by the end of the year. I think the preview book. So I write the parenting guide for that. So that'd be really great for kids. It's a great story called Little Crap Finds a Friend. It's an awesome journey, and it really gives parents the introduction to the sun sign and how you can nurture your child by the sun and some fun tips and stuff. So I'm really proud of that, and I'm hoping that 2021, that gets to birth.
And you'll be the first ones to hear about it as soon as it's ready for purchase. But listen, you want to follow Dom. She's amazing. She's got lots of great information for all of you, and we will have her back soon. So I just want to thank her so much for sharing her wisdom
Sure. Love you, girl. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, babe. Okay, hang tight.
Bye.
You and me
Thanks,
are going to
everyone.
keep chatting.